Sean, you're going to record this? There we go. We're recording. So thank you all for joining us. This is the third State of the Bucks County Courts. This one's entitled The Court Awakens because next Monday, we should be back up and running, at least more full-time. They've been running through this whole process, but now we'll have everyone back. So we've got a lot of people here in the courtroom that I want to just briefly introduce before we get started. We've got Judges Finley and McMaster here. We have Steve Heckman here from Court Administration. The Sheriff is here today, Milt Worrell, along with Chief Perry Ferreira. We also have Chris Daly from Bucks County Emergency Services. He's the Director of the Security Division. They're all present in the courtroom to help fill you in on what the next few weeks are going to look like. Before we turn it over to them, a couple of quick announcements. One, you saw an order that came out this morning from Court Administration. Take a look at that. It deals with a further extension of the judicial emergency by the Supreme Court, but only really influences a few minor areas. Our plan to get back to work in the courthouse next week is still on. The Master's Office, just for any family law practitioners out there, also asked me to mention and clarify that in the month of June, custody and alimony conferences will be held by telephone. You should receive telephone instructions with your notices for the month of June. They will not be in person. Month of July, still up in the air. They're working on it. They are also working on whether we will have equitable distribution master's hearings in the month of June. That still is in progress. We're not sure yet. But they just wanted to make sure all attorneys knew all custody and alimony conferences in June are by telephone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Finley and let him take it from there. Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. And Dan, before I actually say my opening remarks, I want to take a minute just to say something to you. I, as sort of an outsider looking in over the last couple of months, have been extremely impressed with how you, the leadership of the Bar Association and Greg have kept the Bar Association, the attorneys informed on what's going on, keeping them up to speed and up to date. It's been impressive to see what you have done. I want to thank all of you guys for keeping that information flowing the way that you have. You really have done a great job. I want to commend you for that. To the practitioners, really today's purpose is to discuss with you what you should anticipate from the time you park your car or walk up to the building, getting in and through the building, through the hallways, and ultimately into a courtroom, and what you can anticipate occurring in your courtroom. I'm going to talk in a few moments generally about what I'll do in my courtroom or plan on doing, and I expect most other judges will do in their courtrooms. A little bit then about what's going on with the criminal end, and Judge McMaster will talk really about the logjam of PFAs and some other matters related to family court. And I see Judge Bowman has joined us, and she may have some input into what she anticipates doing in her courtroom. But what I really want to do at this time is turn it over to Steve Heckman to begin and tell you what you'd anticipate after you park your car. Steve?
Okay, thank you, Judge. What we're trying to do is, as you know, back when Judge Bateman issued his last emergency order 2020-15, we attached a copy of the entry protocol as well as 2 exhibits concerning an aerial view of the outside of the Justice Center, along with a schematic of the lobby area of the Justice Center to show how this will work. As we detailed in that, and I also have here with Chris Daly or Sheriff Worrell and Chief Deputy Ferrara can implement or add on to anything I say. When you stop off at the parking lot, there's going to be actually 2 main ways to get in. If you're at the parking lot and you use the shuttle, well, that's right. We've got the screen, the exhibit on the screen now to show you people coming in from the parking lot. Will be instructed to either those that use the shuttle will be informed by a security officer to have the proper masks, or mask will be provided. and the other individuals going to the courthouse, walking up the ramp there area, will then proceed from that area to the base of the ramp and the stairs, there's now a long tent set up. Many of you may have already seen that, and that's an area where will be manned by security officials and a sheriff to instruct you on the way to go. Masks will be required of everyone entering the court of the Justice Center. If you don't have a mask will be provided, but it's strongly recommended that you advise your clients and you to wear masks. We will do our best to maintain social distancing as the people are processed up the ramp or up the steps, but they're going to have to go in one way, and that's the main door. So as you go up the ramp, instructing them to maintain the appropriate distancing as they proceed up to the ramp to the Main Street entrance. Now, at the Main Street entrance, or for those who use the shuttle that get off there, there will be a tent also to provide for those people coming from Main Street to be given or instructed they must wear masks or be given a mask before entry into the Justice Center. Now, as part of this procedure too, people who come in will be asked to put their small items into a plastic bag. This does not, as far as the attorneys go, this does not mean your briefcases or court files, but the cell phone and things like that. The purpose for that is to provide a safety for putting it in the plastic bag so that the security officials don't have to keep sanitizing the plastic buckets. So just put your items in the bag and bring that with you when you come in the courthouse. There will be only one entrance for attorneys, clients, and other visitors, and that will be through the main doors. There'll be a tent there to help facilitate that, as I said, and there's also an additional tent over the smoking area. But right, as you can see on that diagram, the tents are marked in red, and I believe they're marked in red. Yes, and there's security checkpoints along the way. So we just want you to make sure that you're doing everything you can. We also encourage attorneys to limit the number of family members or other people they bring with them. It's going to be difficult at first because of all the procedures we're going to be implementing to try and keep down the number of people actually in the courthouse. So it's important that any non-essential, and I hate to use that word for people, but non-essential individuals not come into the Justice Center. There will be signs posted indicating the distancing, and also, as you can see here from the, when you get into the building, you'll proceed through there's a map showing, if you want to go to the other diagram, thank you. That's the diagram of the lobby area showing there were people who come in and the serpentine route that you'll take in to go to the two security counters, screening counters there on the lobby area. The exits are marked for people when they're leaving. As you may be aware, the side door, which we call the 24/7 entrance, will be used for county employees only. It's helped to facilitate getting them in. We'll be asking them to come in early, and so not to mix in with the crowd of other visitors. And that is only for county employees with their badge ID, identification badge with them. And I'm sorry it can't be extended to anyone else at this time, and the separate procedures are going to be used for that. So no one is to proceed, no visitors or attorneys are to proceed in that area. As you proceed into the Justice Center, when you come in, there'll be deputy sheriffs down below at the lobby area to help direct you to the appropriate place you need to go. We are asking you, when you use the elevators, to limit it to 4 people. And I suggest that by using all 4 corners of the elevator. It may not be perfect, but it's the best way to, we believe, facilitate the movement of people up to the courtrooms. The steps are obviously going to be advisable for all those healthy enough to do it. Recommend that you travel up the steps and go that way to cause less traffic in the elevators. As you can see here from the courtroom, if you can see our setting here, we have established plexiglass shields in front of the witness stand and in front of the minute clerk and court reporters. And we hope to have those available in all of our courtrooms by Monday, June 1st, ahead of the expected cases coming in, the few that day and the more that will be in on June 3rd. At that point, as you make your way up to the courtroom, there will be tip staff in the courtroom who will be coordinating the judge's protocols with you. They will allow only enough people in for that particular case, or that will allow for proper social distance seating in the courtroom. We have marked certain areas where there is, with a blue tape concerning where you may sit. Obviously, family members may likely sit closer together, but we are going to maintain that people try to maintain the social distancing, which means there will be lines outside the courtroom, and they will be instructed to try and maintain the social distancing and also to make sure everybody continues to wear their masks. It is also hopeful that with the PFA hearings and other matters coming up, that the parties will not bring in children, if at all possible, or any other people that aren't important to the case. It's going to be very difficult to manage that, and we would ask your cooperation in doing that. The staff during the courtroom, just so you're aware again, that there will be a break in the courtroom proceedings from about 12:30 to 2 o'clock, somewhere in that range, for general services to do a complete deep cleaning of the courtroom and the bench and table areas. So hearings that are scheduled to start at 1 will be starting a little bit later, as some of you may already have that notices for the PFA hearings. But that will be done, and periodically during the day, tip staff will be instructed to clean off tables as much as possible during proceedings. Now, as we go forward, each judge will have his or her own procedures for handling matters in the courtroom. We ask that all the attorneys come in masked along with your clients. If there is an issue rising in the courtroom concerning that, or the ability for the judge or parties to hear, that will be up to the judge to make a determination as whether or not you may or may not be able to remove your mask. But just be cognizant of what we were trying to do, sliding papers through the openings here in the plexiglass shields to accomplish what needs to be done. We won't be having any actual trials for quite a while. The jury preclusion is on until at least at this point, August 3rd. I also want to address briefly the emergency order by Judge Bateman that went out this morning. It addresses two minor areas or lesser areas that you have to be concerned about. It does not affect the June 1st opening of the courthouse or any of the protocols that we have been discussing. However, it does suspend, for all practical purposes, Rule 1100 for all criminal proceedings until August 29th. Thank you. I think that order's on there. And also, it also suspends any rules that prevent us from using advanced communications technology, that is, video hearings, especially at the MDJ level with incarcerated inmates. We want to be able to proceed full speed ahead with expediting those hearings without having to have them transported to the magisterial district judge's court, which may not happen for a while since the prison is still in a period of lockdown. But we hope that things will get better to allow further movement in the future. But that's the Judge Bateman's order is effective until August 29th. It may or may not be supplemented depending on how things go as we head toward August for jury procedure. Again, let me stress that you must work closely with the tip staff who are in the judge's courtroom and concerning the flow of your case and your clients into the courtroom. If you have a case with 10 or 15 witnesses, obviously, we'd ask you to, for sentencing purposes or for a hearing, that you consider whether they're all essential to what you need to do, and if necessary, they'll have to be kept outside pending the courtroom you're in. Obviously, if you're in courtroom 410, there's a bigger area providing for more seating and social distancing arrangements. Obviously, with the other courtrooms, they may be limited to anywhere from 6 to 14 people in the gallery of the courtroom. That's excluding the attorneys and the court staff. If there are any particular questions about the procedures, or if the sheriff or security needs to add anything, let me know now. But Sheriff, are we all right so far?
We're good.
Okay, Chief? Okay, Chris?
Yes, just one concern that I have is, and I met with Chief Ferrer this morning and talked to the sheriff a little bit later. Steve, it's my understanding that only employees will come through the side door.
Correct.
The attorneys that have our issued ID card, there are approximately 150 of them in the county that have an ID card. And I just want to make sure that we instruct the people on which line to get into. So even though an attorney has a county ID card, they will not be able to come into the employee entrance. Is that my understanding?
I'm a little confused on that because I initially thought they were, but I guess we stopped that.
I mean, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just need to make sure that when the attorneys show up, that I don't tell an attorney to go to the side door. They go all the way up to the side door and we deny them, or you deny them, but we're a team here. We deny them entry. That's only going to set it back. So I want to make.
I would suggest, can we defer to either Steve or Judge Finley, what you're calling that, and we'll follow your lead.
Correct.
I'm fine either way. So whatever your preference is on that, I don't think it's going to matter for me or for Chris on flow one way or the other.
And if I can jump in here, I actually spoke to Judge Bateman last week, and I talked to the sheriff last week, and I was left with the impression that if attorneys had a county ID, that they would be able to access the courthouse through the employee entrance.
Well, I think that's ultimately a decision for the president judge. And if that's what he indicated to Mr. Keene, then I think that's it. And so I would say until you hear otherwise, that's the way to go.
Yes, we'll amend that then to that any attorneys with appropriate county badge can come into the employee entrance.
But I'll follow up with Judge Bateman, and I'll send a follow-up message to the members just to clarify that.
Okay, thanks for
Thank
addressing.
you. I just want to make sure that we get the flow going and there's no hitches in the giddy up, so to speak. We want to get people moving. Thank you very much.
If I could add one thing to that, just so the attorneys are aware that me and the Chief Daly had talked about this morning. Do you want to talk about anything with the merging at the front prior to coming in the building?
Very good. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, 'cause I know me and you talked about that this morning, just so they're aware what your guys are going to tell them.
Everybody coming from the parking lot, the main parking lot down on Union Street, will go up there well, they'll have an officer there that will direct. We're going to try to keep the admin people to go up Broad Street to keep that area clean for getting into the Justice Center. But people will be taking the shuttle, and people sometimes walk down Main Street, and there'll be two lines converging, one coming up from the parking garage and other people that are on foot, and many attorneys are on foot and they walk. So there's going to be two lines coming together. We're aware of that, and what we're just going to have to do is it'll be working if we have 5, 6 people in one line. Of course, we're going to have a larger line with people coming. We will intermingle them in the equation, U3, 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 we're done this line, then U3, then we'll go back to the one line. I'll say it, that line off of Main Street will be a lot shorter than the line coming up from the parking garage. But that being said, we got to remember that there's 2 shuttles in the morning running, so they're going to be taking 4 people at a time. So the line still will be shorter, but we do have a plan to merge everybody in and get everybody in as quickly and safely as possible.
And if I could add with Dan, it's Sheriff, if I could add one more thing, if you want to pass on to your colleagues and to the other attorneys, I'm sure there'll probably be situations that we've seen in the past where they may be running late or have some kind of issue where they're not quite where they need to be at a certain point in time, and I get that. We're not going to have the ability to allow them to jump 10 or 15 people because they're running late for court. You can imagine the chaos and problems that'll cause for both security and my officers. So maybe get the word out to these guys. I understand it might be an inconvenience at times, but in order to keep our machine going, they got to kind of keep on point also.
Okay, that's a summary, Dan, of what we've done based on our meetings and also the protocols that we issued. I don't know if there are any specific questions relating to security or entrance into the courthouse that we can address, if we can address at this time.
Do you want to take him now, Dan, or do you want to take him toward the end? How do you want to proceed?
Well, let me see. I'm going to turn it over to Sean. He's monitoring the chat and see if there's any questions that are good to bring up right now.
All right.
Gentlemen, we've received a number of questions from the individuals who are watching. Some involve the attorney ID cards. What's the status of attorney ID cards? There were previously cards issued for the old courthouse. Are there any attorney IDs being issued, or is it being considered for the new house to try and new courthouse to try and ease entry? What's the status of that?
To my knowledge, it's not being addressed at this time.
You're correct, Steve. If you have a valid issued county ID card, that will work, as we just discussed, at the side entrance where the employees will go or enter into the Justice Center.
All right. What about personal items through security? One question asked, will individuals have to carry, I'm not sure I understand this, small personal items? Will we be carrying plastic bags with us, or does the bag stay with security?
We will issue you a small plastic bag. We ask that you put all your personal belongings in that small plastic bag. When you get to the Justice Center, at that time, we're going to ask you to remove your belt. We do not want anybody removing their belt while they are in line. So then what you're going to do is you're going to come in. If you're a visitor, you're going to put the plastic bag in the bin. It's going to be screened. I'm not going to speak for the sheriff's deputy, but then the sheriff's deputy, if you come in and it's in the bag, he or she can see what's in that bag. And that'll prevent them from handling it and touching it. They'll be able to see it. You'll be able to go through screening and move on your way. Am I good with that, Chief?
Yeah, and to add on that, just so the counselors are all aware, the purpose of the bag is basically for the items you have in your pockets, your phone, your keys, your wallet, that kind of stuff. Your briefcase, your files, that obviously we're not giving you a bag for that. The purpose of the bag is so you can put your personal items out of your pockets, cell phone and keys into that, throw it through the x-ray machine to bin, and grab that bag out in one shot so that your personal items don't have to touch any other foreign objects and any kind of contamination that might occur. That's the point of that bag, just the stuff's in your pockets.
All right. Gentlemen, with ladies with their handbags and pocketbooks, are there any specific restrictions on size or what can be included there? There have been a couple specific questions. One, just can women bring their pocketbooks? And then there was other ones involving, do you want women to pre-package the small items in their purses, kind of like at the airport?
Well, it might help I mean, they'll be given a plastic bag here to do that, but if they have a plastic bag to pre-package metallic items or things that would trigger the sensors, they should do that ahead of time.
At the same time, maybe let's minimize the amount of bags. One less thing they have to go through, if possible. I mean, I understand that's may not be able to do, but I know that's what we talked about with the county employees, to try and minimize those bags that Chris's people aren't having to go through the x-ray, lower that amount.
So
If we can, I understand it's not everybody can do that.
yeah, it's still critical to minimize what actually needs to be brought in. And I understand with purses and bags like that, it may be difficult.
Right.
But that's our goal, is to try and do that.
Are the bags that are being issued, are they being reused, or are they disposed by the individual when they're given back?
They're disposed, once you take your stuff and go into the building, you can discard it or throw it away when you get home. It's yours now. It's basically like a Ziploc bag, right, Chris, is what we,
To be honest with you, it's a small trash bag that they use in the liners.
yeah, disposable though.
It's just
Yeah.
disposable, very.
Yeah, you can discard them when you're done with them, Sean.
Discard them.
Okay. Thanks, Sheriff. There's a couple questions that we've received regarding actual court practices. I don't know if now's the appropriate time to discuss those, Judge Finley and Judge McMaster, or is there more to present on those issues first?
I think if you have any other questions regarding essentially how to get to your car or from your car to the courtroom, now's the time to ask them. If those questions have been resolved, then I'll move on to what I think you should anticipate in courtrooms.
The only other questions that we've received that I think haven't been covered, essentially, the parking lot at the bottom of the hill, is that still free or is there a charge for that lot? What's the current status of that, given the distancing outside?
As we're charging double for attorneys. No, in all seriousness, parking, pay to park has not been implemented yet. It probably will not be implemented till about 1 August due to the pandemic, of course. So it is going to be free parking. You can go in, park a car anywhere you'd like to park, and make your way up to the Justice Center.
Chris,
And
parking
Chief Daly, it
meters.
was my understanding, and maybe Sheriff Worrell's heard this as well, I'm not sure. I saw a release from the borough yesterday that the meters are not, they're not going to charge for the meters, they're free, but they are going to enforce the 3-hour parking time limit. Is that your understanding?
I'll leave that to you.
Yes, that is true. We've been trying to get an exact date as to when they are going to start using the meters again. We have not been able to get that, but that is true. They are going to be going around enforcing a probably 3 to 3.5 hour limit on the parking.
All right, thank you, Chief. Judge
Also,
Finley, I
just-
think that's all we have for now regarding those issues.
Chris, did you want to finish with
Just
something?
one
Mr.
more
Chairman?
thing, and I know it may sound funny, but for your clients and things of that nature, if you're talking to them, there are no facilities out there. So if they're in line, that may or may not present a problem. But just to let your clients know that there are no facilities. We do have the masks, we do have the bags, and we do have water in the event that it's hot and they're in line.
Well, let me jump in at this point and start with this. You now know that the process to get from your car or your office to the courtroom is going to take some time. So please make allowance for that. If you're scheduled for a proceeding at 9 or 10 or 1 o'clock, give yourself more time than you normally would have. I'm going to speak for myself as far as my courtroom, but I think from my discussions with my colleagues, this will generally be what you should anticipate. But as you know, each judge is sort of the king or queen of their own courtroom, and how that will proceed in that courtroom may vary to some extent from courtroom to courtroom. But in my courtroom, and let's start with masks. I have had this conversation for weeks with other judges, with court staff, with attorneys. It is not my intention that I will wear a mask in my courtroom, although I will tell you, I go back and forth about that, and I ask my staff all the time if they would like me to do that. We have sufficient distance that I don't think that's necessary. However, you should enter a courtroom. Your witnesses, your clients should enter the courtroom in a mask. From there, it's up to the individual judge. From the judges I speak to, generally, everyone should have a mask on throughout the day. To some extent, that'll be dictated by the court reporter. If a court reporter says, I can't understand what that person's saying, I suspect the judge will say, you can go ahead and lower your mask for now. But understand that is a courtesy to other people in the room, so you should be sensitive to the other people in the courtroom, many of whom may fall into those compromised statuses in some way. And I mean, that means your opposing counsel and maybe their clients. Certainly the minute clerks and the court reporters, be cognizant of those people and how they might feel. So again, keep your mask on unless the judge indicates otherwise. Now, for my courtroom, what I anticipate doing is having attorneys arrive. Only the attorneys should come into the courtroom. Check in with my staff. Tell my minute clerk, who you are, what you have, how many matters are you ready to go. And then go back out in the hallway. These courtrooms aren't that big. So it's my anticipation at this point that I will keep everyone in the hallway. And then as people have checked in and are ready to proceed, I'll have my tip staffs go out and have the Smith proceeding come in. I'll handle that and send those people on their way. From talking to other judges, and generally that may be what people do, because again, we're limited here in how many people we can accommodate. And unfortunately, that puts some constraints on members of the public attending, and certainly family members and witnesses. So I think I'm going to handle my matters to the extent I can, one at a time. With that in mind, let me mention what we anticipate doing next week with the criminal listing, and Ms. Worrell can correct me, or Mr. Heckman if I'm wrong. But next week, and frankly the coming weeks, are going to be more in the format of pre-trial conferences. Notices have gone out, scheduling, I think, A through M for morning at 9 a.m. and N through Z in the afternoon. Again, I'm talking about criminal matters. When those people, counsel, arrive and their clients, the notices, as always, direct that they go to, I think it's 4202, that's the district attorney's booth. Now understand, they also want limited contact. So it is anticipated that next week we will have those lists in the morning and the afternoon divided up such that private counsel will be going to certain courtrooms, public defenders will be going to certain courtrooms, unrepresented people will be going to others. I think we have 4 or 5 judges sitting each day. Now, which courtroom to go to? It is anticipated, if it is private counsel, that the district attorney's office will notify you ahead of time by phone. But in any case, if they don't do that, or if you don't fall into those categories, notice will be given in some form which has not yet been fully nailed down. Either they will be posted on like a easel board, or they will be given a list telling them where to go, or they will be orally notified. I don't think that has been pinned down, but people will be directed to one of those 4 or 5 courtrooms based upon their classification. Again, I would suggest that counsel stick their nose into the courtroom, find out what's going on, speak with staff, get that insider information as to how that particular judge wants to proceed before coming in and plopping your briefcase and your clients down in the courtroom. Find out how that judge wants to go. Again, let me emphasize this to you. Allow for additional time. Be patient. This is a process we are going through, and we will tweak it to hopefully make it work better as we move forward. Monday is a light day. Wednesday and Thursday are potentially heavy lists, and those are the ones essentially I was talking about. Then the following 2 terms at this stage will continue to be the same format. Essentially, attorneys will arrive to discuss what's happening with their case. Now, at any of those times, whether that's next week or the following couple of terms, if they are ready, willing, and able to plead guilty, they've worked it out, or they want to enter an open plea, judges will take those guilty pleas. We've discussed whether or not there are waiver trials. If everybody is ready, willing, and able, we will try to get them assigned. Let me make one other comment. When you arrive, you might want to dress for changeable weather. For me in this courtroom, I'm freezing today. It was sweltering in here last week, so I don't know what to tell you about whether or not you want to bring a sweater or a jacket. has nothing to do with anything of any consequence, but I'm sitting up here shivering. Judge McMaster.
All right. I agree with Judge Finley as to how I'm going to handle the courtroom, and I suspect, as he said, most of us will be doing the same thing. We're going to do our best to keep only the people that are needed at that moment in the courtroom. As many of you know, we have a very long list for PFAs on Wednesday. That list is, I'm handling the contempts. I have 4 other judges handling the other PFA matters. So there'll be 4 courtrooms going, and there are 4 separate lists for each courtroom. There'll be a list for 9 o'clock, a list for 10:30, a list for 1 o'clock, and a list for 2:30. We're doing that to spread it out. We've also made it very clear that anybody that has an agreement should tell their client to remain home, be available by phone. We don't want extra people if there's an agreement. And I know that Kim Litsky and the Bar Association has been working very diligently to have the attorneys all assign their cases well in advance so they can work out agreements, be it for a continuance, an agreed upon order, any type of an agreement. They don't have to bring their clients here. They don't have to bring witnesses. But we do want them available by phone if there's a question that comes up. But to the greatest extent possible, we want to do those things just with the paperwork and the attorney saying their clients have authorized this. So, that will help us limit the number of people here. As a couple people have said, I know in a lot of the PFA cases, there's various family members that come for moral support and all. Please don't bring them. We're going to have enough people here to start out with. Please don't bring children. I should also say that in addition to what Mr. Keene mentioned about the master's office, domestic relations is going to continue to do things. All of their conferences in June will be by telephone, and we're doing hearings by telephone or Blue Jeans. So we're not bringing people in for support until probably July. Now, there may be exceptions where we have to start doing contempts, but they're going to do conferences on all the contempt cases because we realize a lot of people who may be behind in their payments are behind because they lost their job, they're laid off or something like that, and we don't want to bring them in just to learn that fact from them. We're going to try to do that by telephone conferences. Again, I really want to thank the Bar Association and all the people who have volunteered to help us with the PFAs, because it hopefully will make a big difference on how smoothly we do things.
Judge Bowman, anything you want to add about how you anticipate things proceeding in your courtroom?
I think it'll be very similar. I want to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable in the courtroom. I would add one other thing. If people are running late, I know I would much rather know that they're in line and they're running late than not know where they're at. So I would encourage communication to chambers, call, email, or whatnot, if someone's stuck in line or didn't anticipate it would take as long to get through. So I'd just rather know than someone, and they can at least give a call and then we're all on the same page.
I think it's always better when counsel or parties let a judge know that they're running late rather than just show up and try to give the excuse. Hey, Steve, I got a question that maybe the attorneys, if they were here, might have. On the pews, there is blue tape. What's the purpose of the tape? I know it has something to do with sitting. Does that mean sit here or don't sit here?
No, I mean, sit there. Okay, we tried to space it out 6 feet by measuring all the different courtrooms. And there is not a lot of room left in some of the smaller courtrooms for a gallery. So that's the specific area where they should sit.
Let me emphasize this again before we go to questions. This is a work in progress. None of us have been through this before. Cooperate, make suggestions if you think there are better ways that we could do things. And I will tell you, if you're not comfortable because of something in the courtroom about where people are sitting or about a judge not wearing a mask, figure out a subtle way to let them know. And in my case, I certainly will put one on. But again, understand that we haven't done this before. And as we go through these next several weeks, it's going to be an interesting transition in time. And then when that time comes that we begin to bring jurors back in, that'll be an interesting situation that we'll deal with. Mr. Gresh, Mr. King, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. We've got quite a few questions regarding court practice. I'm gonna
Nothing
try
about
and go-
haircuts, right?
Not about haircuts, not yet. A specific question for Discovery Court on June the 12th. Do we know how many judges will be handling that? There's several attorneys that already have several matters pending there.
Judge Bowman or McMaster, do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Ms. Worrell, we have an answer from Ms. Worrell.
One.
One judge will be sitting in Discovery Court on June 12th. Who is that judge?
Judge Baldwin.
Judge Baldy.
Okay. When are arbitrations expected to resume? Is there any idea on that?
Ms. Worrell,
Like July,
In July.
is it still anticipated that there
July
will
1st
be,
and 2nd. July 1st and 2nd will be the first arbitration days. And then at the end of July, we're going to have numerous lists, well, a larger list, because I'm planning on using multiple courtrooms for people to do their arbitrations, and I'll have a little more space to spread out.
July 1st and 2nd, then that last week of July?
Yes.
All
Well, the
right.
week of the 20th, the week of July 20th, there'll be I believe we're doing Monday the 20th, Wednesday the 22nd, Thursday the 23rd, and Friday the 24th will be arbitration days. They're makeup lists because we missed 10 lists, so we're trying to get them all together and get them done. But July 1st will be the first arbitration list that we will do.
Settle, settle, settle.
Regarding attorneys with multiple cases on the same day, will there be any effort to try and make sure that attorneys' files are all listed in the same courtroom? Or is it just going to be wherever they are, and you have to run around to find them?
I can only speak to the criminal matters, and in the criminal matters, they will be assigned to a courtroom because they're either private counsel or public defender.
For the PFA list, we are doing that where attorneys have entered their appearance. We're shuffling cases around so that that attorney doesn't have to move around. Now, if, for instance, the attorney has a case at 9 o'clock in front of Judge Yeager, they may well still have a case at 2:30 in front of Judge Bowman. But if they're in the morning or afternoon, we're trying our best to keep them all in one courtroom in front of one judge.
That doesn't mean a problem won't occur, and what the question was may in fact occur. Just make sure you communicate that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, we're only doing that where we know the attorney's involved. If the attorney
Right.
hasn't entered their appearance and they show up that day, oh well, not much we can do about it. So if you are, especially in the PFA field, if you are intending to represent somebody, file an entry of appearance, let Stacy Antman in the pathonatory's office know, because we may be assigning a volunteer attorney for that because we think the person is pro se.
Ms. Worrell?
I just wanted to add that as far as the PTC list on June 3rd and June 4th, at this point, when I last spoke to Judge Bateman.
That's translated to pretrial conferences for criminal matters.
Since those lists will be planned with an AM and a PM session, if an attorney is representing a defendant with the last name A through M, they'll be scheduled for 9 AM. That attorney may have a matter that's listed in the afternoon with the defendant's last name N through Z. At this juncture, from what Judge Bateman had suggested, that we are not to say, grant any requests to an attorney who may say, hey, I have a listing in the morning and the afternoon. Can I just do them both in the morning? The answer to that question at this juncture is no. I don't know if that will change, as we learn a little more and we're able to adapt better, But for June 3rd and June 4th, we're not entertaining any requests such as that.
Yeah, I don't think Judge Bateman suggested it. I think he ordered that.
You're probably correct.
John?
Yes, Judge. Couple of questions. Going back to the arbitrations for a minute, is there any thought to doing arbitrations via advanced communication technology?
That has not been brought to my attention or something that we've discussed as of yet.
I would think if the attorneys discussed it and agreed that that's something like what they would like to do, bring it to the Court Administration's attendance or attention, and maybe it'll get worked out to be done that way. I think that's an attorney-driven thing, don't you, Judge?
I think the advanced communication should be advanced communication as you suggested, settle the case, and then they won't have to.
That's right.
In regard to jury trials, when are jury trials resuming? And will they be 12 jurors? I know it was discussed before by Judge Bateman in a previous video conference that it might be with a jury of less than 12. Is there any further update on that?
Not at this time. We're tentatively looking at starting August 3rd. I don't know if we'll actually go off on that date. As far as using a panel of less than 12, that has not been decided yet.
Mr. Keene, has there been any thought among the Bar Association of setting up a committee or a group to discuss how jury trials would proceed? I'd be personally happy to have input from counsel how they think that could actually take place in the current circumstance demanding social distancing. I'm happy to have the input. I think most of the bench, we're trying to sort it out.
Following the last video conference, I was contacted by a few attorneys from the civil lit section that were talking about forming a group that would then make recommendations to the court as to ways things could get done, especially using technology. I'm not sure where that stands right now. Judge Baldy had invited that information at the last.
I thought I remembered that.
I can circle back with them and see where that stands and see if we can incorporate this the jury issue into it also, because I remember the group of attorneys were all fairly experienced and brought different things to the table. So let me see what they're saying right now.
And I would be very happy to hear from the criminal bar or participate with the criminal bar in discussing how to go about the process of selecting, seating, and then deliberating in a jury case in the Justice Center.
All right, I'll talk to Mr. Bindley-Meyer about that. He's the head of the section, the criminal law section this year.
Judge, in regard to criminal days specifically, is there any anticipation of differences in how the court will handle cases for those who are in custody versus those who are in the community? Is there any, specifically with individuals who are currently housed in other counties, are there any specific protocols about possibly doing those via video instead of having those people brought into Bucks County? A few questions along those lines.
I don't know that I've been part of a specific discussion. The reality of it is, understand that essentially for the next
Couple of months.
couple of months, those matters will really proceed in the form of pretrial conferences. I mean, there's not a whole lot we can do with persons that are not within Bucks County. I guess theoretically, we could do certain types of proceedings. While I'm not sure it withstands muster under the rules, I have taken video guilty pleas. I think several other judges have. So if everybody is in agreement, maybe some of those can take place. But the reality of it is, persons who are in custody outside of Bucks County, those matters will probably have to be deferred. Don't you think, Mr. Heckman?
Unless some arrangement can be worked out using a video conferencing with that particular jail, but obviously for purposes of a plea only.
Ms. Worrell?
I'd like to add on that somewhat, just because with respect to the in custody matters on the June schedule, we've arranged, since the video purges, during the whole pandemic, we've had a judge each day scheduled to do videos between here and BCCF. And so there's one judge assigned to do any early guilty pleas, any types of PV hearings or purges that may, have to occur on each day. And the assigned judges, we send a list the day before to the prison so they can organize the lineup of the inmates to know which order they need to go into to do the videos as efficiently as possible with this one judge. What we did on the June schedule, I typically assigned a judge to a video capable courtroom, which in June I selected courtroom 450. And the judge who's assigned to courtroom 450 during those weeks will be the video purge judge each day, as well as any other videos that need to occur between here and BCCF. So each week there's a judge that's assigned to courtroom 450, and that judge will be the video judge, so to speak, for matters between BCCF and here. As far as if there are any inmates in SCIs, we have been trying to schedule videos with them. Sometimes they go forward, sometimes they cancel them, but those have to be scheduled around with a judge who happens to be in a video capable courtroom, and obviously around whatever he or she may have scheduled in the morning from any list that they may be receiving. So it seems that if we have to do a video with an SCI with another judge, as long as he or she are assigned to a video capable courtroom, it can be arranged at 9 a.m. or sometime, later in the day, obviously around when the courtroom is being disinfected in the middle of the day. So it would probably be 9 a.m. or 2 p.m., something like along those lines. But that is all kind of like a one-on-one between the judge and who the defendant is and who the back judge might be.
Let me follow up by saying, during this period, right now we're really talking about from June 1st through at least mid-July, really August 1st. While we are limited in what we can do, it is certainly the consensus of the criminal court judges. If we can move a matter forward, we will do that. We take great joy in expediting things. So we will do whatever we can to either resolve cases or just get them moving. So we will, if there's a way to do it, we'll get it done.
All right. Judge, for ARD matters, is there any, specifically the first ARD date we have coming up is on June the 9th. Is the clerk up and running to the point where ARD clients can still obtain the costs in advance and try and proceed through that in advance, so there's not such a mess of people waiting down in the first floor to pay their costs?
Ms. Worrell, Mr. Heckman, either you guys or anybody else know the answer to that question?
I do not know specifically. I don't know why they wouldn't accept it as, at least starting Monday, June 1st, advance payments. So I would recommend they do that.
In regard to individuals, parties who wish to request the ability to appear remotely due to age or health-related concerns, either generally or specifically in regard to, for example, a PFA plaintiff, should that be handled by contacting the judge assigned before the court date?
Yeah, I mean, the attorney should make that contact. I mean, everybody in PFA court should have an attorney assigned to them. So they should make that request through their attorney. And yes, we are very liberally granting those requests. Just understand that people have to be available, so if they're doing it, and some of the judges will do it via BlueJeans, some of us will do it by telephone, but the people have to be available when they're called.
And I'll note that during our video conference, I got a message from Kim Litsky, who's attending with us. Kim is helping to coordinate the pro bono attorneys that are being assigned for PFAs. She asked that if anybody is going to be privately representing someone on a PFA day, that they email her and let her know that. So it's easy to take that person off the pro bono list so we know that they don't need a lawyer. Has there been, or is there, what's the protocol going to be regarding criminal defendants who are sentenced to a period of incarceration or house arrest at a court hearing? Will they be taken right from the court to BCP? Is the holding cell in the sheriff's office going to operate normally? What's the protocol for that?
Well, I personally anticipate that they'll go directly to a correctional facility unless I've ordered otherwise, but I'll turn that over to the sheriff or the chief about that.
This kind of plays in the last two questions to a certain degree. One of the issues we're still mapping out with those in custody, regardless of where they're going, is where they're coming from and who they can go back to. State DOC has put out guidelines that the counties are following, but not following. So they're still kind of mapping it out. We have certain facilities that says, yeah, you can take John Smith out, but you can't bring him back. So, okay, then where do we put him? So there's a lot of coordination with my office and with Chris Peroli and Dave Kratz on how we're going to orchestrate that. And some of our daily run prisons are still problematic. CFCF, for example, doesn't do video, or the capability they have is very limited, even though that's kind of what we're trying to do is push as much video as possible. And if anybody saw a notice on the news that there's now apparently a big outbreak that was probably there, but it's now being publicized in Mercer. And we go to Mercer on a regular basis. So we still don't have a full answer on when we can and when we can't go in and out. It's literally a case by case.
Now, if I sentence somebody to 90 days on a DUI,
Right.
they'll be taken directly to the correctional facility here in Bucks.
More than likely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if that answers your question, but if you need to follow up, let us know.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I think the in custodies is not going to be much of a problem. It's if we're bringing somebody in from out for something here and then if we had to take them back, those are where we saw the gray spots. Somebody that walks in and we then take possession of them, for lack of a better, we'll be able to get them into Bucks, is my understanding from Dave Kratz.
If any of you followed the correctional stuff in the paper, you know, there are quarantining processes throughout the state, both for adults and juveniles, that require people every time they move, seems like move an inch, they have to go into another 14-day quarantine before the next door opens. So it's a complicated process at this time.
That is correct.
I believe that's what Dave Kratz is doing, is any new inmate, any new person that's brought to the prison is in quarantine for a certain period of time before he's put in general population.
Yeah, and we're in touch with those guys almost daily right now.
In regard to, pardon me, I lost it for a second. Oh, when we were last together on video, there was a discussion about the service of process by the sheriff's office. Sheriff Worrell, can you help us out and let us know when your office will once again begin serving process?
We already started.
Great. And that'll be done, I guess, on first come, first serve. Anything that you got during the shutdown will be delivered first and then going out from there?
So everything we had on our plate, so to speak, is in process of being caught up on or was already handled. So we're kind of to a point where as new stuff comes in, it's going to go right out.
Great. Thank you, Sheriff. Another question that came up regarding entry into the building, maybe for Chief Daly. Is there going to be, it was discussed in the past that there might be temperature monitoring for people coming in. Is there any plan to take the temperature of individuals as they come into the building?
I know that was put out on a couple of memos, but no, there'll be no temperature taking of anyone entering the building.
Yes, we've discussed that with Dr. Damsker, and he doesn't feel that it's an effective way to proceed. I know other jurisdictions feel differently, but that's not how we're going to proceed.
As the sheriff just noted, there's some difficulty in bringing people into Bucks County from other locations. If the defense and the district attorney can agree that matter be done by video, how should they coordinate that with the court? Is it a call to the administrative judge? Is it a call to Mr. Gomez in court administration to set up video? How do they do that?
Are you talking about an adult criminal matter? Is that what I understand?
An adult criminal matter, specifically someone who was housed in another county, Your Honor.
I would suggest you notify Ms. Worrell so that matter probably would end up being scheduled in front of the judges doing the video matters, is my guess. But start with her. And like I said, we're happy to work with you to resolve matters and get matters to a conclusion.
I've got a question for Judge McMaster regarding custody matters. Two-part question, Judge. First, will judges enter temporary orders based on recommendations of the master after a telephone conference? And two, what will be the timing of scheduling evidentiary custody hearings? Will they be in person or will they be done via communication technology?
The answer to your first question is yes, we are continuing to do that. If there are attorneys involved, many of the judges are contacting the attorneys to get follow-up information and try to work out an agreement. But yes, we are entering interim orders. I'm meeting later this afternoon with Matt Gary and Linda Dilks in the master's office to kind of triage all of the pending matters. All of the family court judges had until the end of the day yesterday to put any of the stuff that they wanted plugged into the schedule, plugged in, and then we're going to go to the other pile of cases that are there and start scheduling them as quickly as we can. To the extent they're custody cases, we are willing to use the video conferencing. We all now have our own Blue Jeans account so that we can do that. It will require some coordination between the parties and counsel. Counsel will need to be here in the courtroom. Parties and witnesses may be able to be available via Blue Jeans. We have discussed and feel that unlike support, where we're willing to do some of those things just by telephone, when it comes to custody, we want to actually see the people, even if it's just by a video. So yes, it's available. I would suggest that anybody who wants to do that should contact the judge that schedules the case and arrange it through the judge's chambers before the hearing.
Last set of questions we got are basically regarding the ability of counsel to interact with and consult with clients, both in the hallways, and I think another relevant question would be at counsel table, for example. Is it going to be required that counsel and their client sit 6 feet apart at counsel table? How are they to interact with each other and discuss things in private?
That's a good question.
I would suggest that if they're both wearing masks, they're going to have to be able to be close enough to communicate to one another. It may be feasible for them to sit at opposite ends of counsel table. It may not be a completely 6 foot distance, but you've got to be able to hear and understand each other too. So I would recommend that, and I would assume prior to the coming to court, counsel have dealt with their clients in a similar fashion. So I would certainly recommend that they sit with a chair in between them, but just close enough that they can understand and speak with each other.
I'm kind of chuckling at that question. I don't know how many of you remember the dispute between the court and the prior set of commissioners over the size of the table and whether or not that was sufficient. But from my perspective, it's you and your client. If you want to sit right next to each other, up side by side, that's your business. If you want to sit at opposite ends of the table, you're welcome to do that. If you're going to sit at opposite ends of the table and you got to jump up to go over and whisper in your client's ear periodically, I hope you do that very few times. Besides that, if you're going to get over and whisper in his ear, you might as well sit next to each other.
Judge Finley, is there any difference in the procedures regarding the issuance of bench warrants for those who do not appear for criminal matters versus violations of probation or sentencing or trial dates? Will they all be handled the same or differently? Is there any change in those protocols at all?
Not that I'm aware of. If people don't show, are you talking about whether or not bench warrants will be issued for failures to appear?
That's one of the questions we got.
Well, I think right now our discussion was we would be pretty liberal about not issuing bench warrants because of the current situation. A lot of that will depend on information presented. If you have a probation officer who says, this guy hasn't shown up the last 6 times we've had appointments, my guess is a bench warrant will be issued. If they say, look, we usually have contact with this guy, I don't think one will be. That's going to depend on the individual judge, but I think our discussions we're going to be pretty lenient about not issuing bench warrants, at least for the time being. Ms. Worrell, does that differ from your recollection?
That's my understanding, Your Honor, that initially, and I'm not sure when that may change, maybe after we experience June 3rd and June 4th to see how that goes, if that will be revisited, but initially the plan was to not issue bench warrants.
I'll note that we are being joined in this conference by District Attorney Weintraub. For those of you who aren't following the chat, Mr. Weintraub just wrote that his office will not request a bench warrant for any criminal matter until after June the 5th, when the governor's order expires.
There's a partial answer.
To rehash quickly, Ms. Worrell, if we can ask you, I think we talked about jury trials not commencing until at least August, and non-jury trials will commence when?
In the civil, for the civil list, June 15th and July 6th terms, we're going to try to do any waiver trials that may be listed and everyone's ready to proceed. And we're hoping to get waiver trials done on the civil aspect. As far as criminal, we haven't quite confirmed whether or not we would do a waiver trial. I think those instances would have to be brought to the assignment judge's attention during the term, or maybe the DA and the attorney to bring it to the judge's attention prior to say, this is the situation, we're all ready to go. Would we be able to proceed as a waiver trial on this date? And then it would be up to that judge to decide whether or not, we had a judge available to do that trial, and who that judge might be, so we could pre-assign it ahead of time and plan accordingly.
All right, I think we've kind of gotten to the end here, how much time we've got. I wanted to thank everyone for coming out. Thank you for presenting. I did have a chance to speak to the president judge during this conference, and he did confirm that attorneys who have courthouse IDs that in the past have granted them access to the Justice Center, and that's usually due to some employment or position they hold, will be able to use that ID in the employee lines here. But I know there in the past have been attorney IDs that have been issued that didn't necessarily have that access. Those will not work for the employee line. Those individuals will have to remain in the general public line. And I did want to just mention 3 people, Kim Litsky, Jess Pritchard, and Hillary Monet, who have done tremendous work with Judge McMaster on this PFA pro bono day on June 3rd. That's going to be crazy, but I think we're going to be all right just due to the number of people who have volunteered. And we really appreciate that. Judge McMaster has put a tremendous amount of time into it, and those people have stepped up along with Stacy from the Pathonetary's office and have done a great job getting it organized. So thank you for that. We appreciate everyone coming out.
We should also mention Mr. Keene is helping in, one of the coordinators too.
Yeah, but I'm just kind of hanging out. They're making me do that, so I'm not taking credit for that.
You were drafted?
Yes, that's fine. I don't mind helping. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for